You're tuned in to 22 Crime, where the truth hides in the details. Together, we dive into the darkest corners of human nature, exploring the mysteries that have left investigators puzzled and families searching for justice. Because in the world of crime, the truth is never as simple as it seems. With just 22 minutes on the clock, let's dive into today's case and uncover the shocking truth. Jill was a vibrant, young woman with her whole life ahead of her when, in 2012, she was senselessly taken from her friends, family, and her loving husband in Melbourne, Australia. Today, we'll explore Jill's life, the events of that fateful night, and the chilling failures in the justice system that allowed this tragedy to happen. If you're craving more details after this episode, be sure to check out the full-length version for an even deeper dive into this chilling mystery. The clock is ticking. Let's uncover the truth behind today's mystery. Viewer discretion is advised. 22 is a true crime podcast that delves into real-life crime stories, which often involve graphic descriptions, sensitive content, and strong language that may not be suitable for all audiences. We strive to present these cases with the utmost respect for the victims and their families. Please note that the content discussed may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. Additionally, all resources and information presented in this podcast are obtained from publicly available internet sources. Listener discretion is strongly advised, and we recommend that only mature audiences proceed with caution. If you are sensitive to such content, please consider watching another video. Stay safe and take care of your mental health. Jill Meagher, born Gillian McKeon on October 30, 1983, in Drogheda, Ireland, was a vibrant, lively spirit from the start. As a child, her family relocated to Perth, Australia, after her father, George, received a job offer there. It was in Australia that Jill spent much of her early childhood, attending Bull Creek Primary School and later Rossmoyne Senior High School. Friends from those years remember Jill as someone with a big personality, always enthusiastic, full of life, and naturally drawn to the arts. She had a passion for drama, loved entertaining others, and was described as a vivacious and bubbly person who could light up any room. In 1996, Jill's family moved back to Ireland, but her connection to Australia remained strong throughout her life. Once back in Ireland, Jill continued her education, attending a local grammar school before moving on to study at St. Oliver's Community College. She was known for her positive outlook and warm personality. After high school, Jill pursued higher education at University College Dublin, UCD, where she ultimately earned a degree in arts. During her time as a student, she worked in the student bar and continued to build friendships, all the while known for her kindness, infectious energy, and natural ability to connect with others. While at UCD, Jill met the love of her life, Tom Meagher. From the moment they connected, their bond was unshakable. The couple quickly fell in love, and those around them could see how deeply devoted they were to each other. Their relationship blossomed, and in 2008, they got married, sealing a love that seemed destined to last forever. In 2009, the couple made the decision to move back to Australia, settling this time in Melbourne, where Jill took on a new role at ABC Radio. She worked as a producer and occasionally appeared on air, becoming a part of the Melbourne radio community. Jill thrived in her role, not only because of her professionalism but also because of her natural charisma and ability to make others feel at ease. Her co-workers at ABC admired her, describing her as witty, intelligent, and wonderful to be around. Despite the move, Jill stayed in close contact with her family in Ireland and Perth, showing the deep love and bond she maintained with them. With her professional life flourishing and her loving marriage to Tom, Jill's future seemed bright and full of promise. She was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, known and loved by everyone she encountered for her warmth, kindness, and passion for life. It was the evening of September 21, 2012, when Jill Meagher headed out for what seemed like a casual, carefree night with her colleagues from ABC Radio. It was the end of a long work week, the perfect opportunity to unwind and soak in Melbourne's lively atmosphere. As the night began, Jill and her friends gathered at Brunswick Green, a cozy bar nestled on Sydney Road, in the heart of Brunswick. The bar, known for its relaxed vibe, offered the perfect setting, good music, flowing conversation, and drinks to ease away the stresses of the week. The mood was light, filled with laughter, the kind of easygoing joy that comes from a night spent with friends. Jill, as always, was at the center of it, engaged, smiling, and enjoying the company of her colleagues outside of the familiar work environment. She had a gift for connecting with people, and on nights like this, her natural warmth and charisma truly shone. As the evening progressed, the group decided to keep the night going, making their way to a second bar just down the road, Bar Etiquette. It was a short walk, one that felt familiar and routine for Jill, a regular in this bustling part of Brunswick. At Bar Etiquette, the drinks continued to flow, and the conversation deepened. Jill was in her element, surrounded by laughter and friendly chatter, the night unfolding with the kind of simplicity that suggests all is well with the world. At some point during the evening, Jill texted her husband, Tom. It was a small, casual message, inviting him to join her and her friends at the bar. Tom, already at home and having drifted off to sleep, didn't see the message until much later. It was the kind of ordinary communication between them that spoke of their close, loving relationship, checking in, staying connected, even during nights apart. As the clock approached 1:30 a.m., the night began to wind down. For Jill, home was just minutes away, a short walk from where she stood outside Bar Etiquette, bidding goodnight to her friends. One of her colleagues, about to catch a taxi, offered her a ride home, but Jill declined. It was a brief walk, one she had made many times before, and the streets of Brunswick were familiar to her. There seemed to be no reason to worry. The streets were quiet now, the vibrant energy of the evening fading into the early morning hours. With her phone in hand and her destination so close, Jill set off down Sydney Road, unaware that this short, familiar journey would mark the beginning of a tragedy that would shock an entire nation. What seemed like a routine decision, walking home alone, would soon change the course of Jill Meagher's life forever. Minutes turned into an agonizing wait, and as the hours crept closer to dawn, the weight of dread settled in. By 4 a.m., panic had set in. This wasn't like Jill. Tom knew her routine, and he knew that if she could, she would have answered his calls or messaged him. Something wasn't right. His heart racing, Tom couldn't sit idly by any longer. He grabbed his keys and hurried out the door, determined to retrace the familiar steps Jill would have taken home from Bar Etiquette. The streets of Brunswick were eerily quiet in the early morning darkness. Tom's mind raced as he scanned the empty sidewalks, calling out her name, hoping against hope that Jill might appear around the next corner. But each block passed in silence. His calls to her phone continued to go unanswered, adding to the mounting sense of fear that gripped him. As the sky began to lighten, Tom's worry turned to full-blown terror. Jill had vanished, and there was no trace of where she could have gone. By 6 a.m., Tom was left with no choice but to report Jill missing to the police. The call was a devastating one to make, but he knew it had to be done. Jill wouldn't just disappear like this, not without a word. The police took immediate action, understanding the urgency of the situation. Officers began scouring the area around Sydney Road, retracing the steps that Tom had taken hours earlier. But still, there were no signs of Jill, no clues to indicate what had happened in those early morning hours. As the sun rose higher, the weight of Jill's absence began to spread beyond just Tom's desperate search. Her colleagues at ABC Radio and friends quickly turned to social media, hoping to mobilize the community. On September 23rd, just a day after Jill was last seen, a Facebook page titled, "Help Find Jill Meagher" was created. Within hours, it garnered thousands of followers, and in less than 5 days, over 100,000 people had joined the cause. The campaign became a digital lifeline for those who wanted to help, amplifying the call for information far beyond Melbourne. Jill's disappearance struck a deep chord across Australia. News outlets picked up the story, and soon it was being broadcast on radio, television, and online platforms nationwide. Her colleagues at ABC used their reach to keep Jill's face and name at the forefront of the public's mind, urging anyone with even the slightest bit of information to come forward. Flyers with Jill's image blanketed the streets of Brunswick, and search parties organized to comb the area. The outpouring of support from strangers, friends, and community members gave Tom and Jill's family a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, someone had seen something that would bring her home. But as the days dragged on, that hope became harder to hold on to. Every passing hour felt heavier than the last. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just a simple case of a person who wandered off or got lost. Something far more sinister had happened to Jill Meagher. The sense of dread hung in the air, growing with each passing moment, as the search for answers intensified. 3 days after Jill Meagher went missing, on September 24, 2012, a significant clue emerged. Jill's handbag was found in a laneway near Hope Street, just a short distance from where she and her husband Tom lived. The discovery of the handbag was a turning point in the investigation, transforming it from a missing persons case into a homicide investigation. This shift in focus signaled to both the authorities and the public that Jill had likely met with foul play. The contents of the bag, personal items like her ABC lanyard and other essentials, were still inside, further raising alarm. The police immediately intensified their search efforts, fearing that Jill had come to harm not far from her home. The circumstances surrounding the discovery of Jill's handbag were suspicious. Police had already searched the area in the early stages of the investigation and had not found the bag. Its sudden appearance in the laneway suggested that someone had deliberately placed it there after the initial search. This led to a troubling possibility. The person responsible for Jill's disappearance might have returned to the scene, potentially tampering with evidence to mislead investigators. This unsettling detail heightened fears that Jill had been abducted or harmed by someone with malicious intent. With the discovery of the handbag, the investigation took on a more urgent tone, as detectives sought to piece together what had happened to Jill and how her bag had mysteriously reappeared in the days following her disappearance. As the investigation into Jill Meagher's disappearance intensified, a critical piece of evidence emerged that provided the first real breakthrough in the case. CCTV footage, retrieved from the Duchess Boutique, a bridal shop located on Sydney Road, captured a significant interaction that would become central to the investigation. In the footage, recorded at 1:42 a.m. on September 22, 2012, just minutes before Jill vanished, a man in a blue hoodie was seen walking around the area outside the shop. Shortly after, Jill appeared on the footage, seen engaging in a brief conversation with this man. The footage was grainy, filmed through the shop window, but it clearly showed Jill and the man interacting, with Jill at one point showing him something on her mobile phone. This CCTV recording was crucial for several reasons. It provided visual confirmation of Jill's last known movements, capturing her in the moments before her disappearance, and identifying a person of interest, the man in the blue hoodie. He was the last person seen with Jill and thus became the focal point of the investigation. With this new lead, the police issued a public appeal, urging anyone who recognized the man in the footage to come forward. The man in the blue hoodie became a key figure in the investigation, and the authorities hoped that by releasing his image, they could quickly identify him. The footage was widely circulated across media outlets, generating a strong response from the public and building pressure for the man to be identified. As the footage spread, speculation about the man's involvement grew. Investigators were particularly concerned about the nature of the interaction between Jill and the man. Her body language in the video suggested discomfort, leading police to suspect that something more sinister may have been at play during their encounter. This suspicion only deepened when further analysis of phone records and license plate data provided additional evidence tying the man to the case, prompting authorities to move swiftly in their efforts to track him down. The identification of the man in the blue hoodie would soon become the turning point in the investigation, leading police closer to uncovering the truth about what happened to Jill Meagher. The investigation into the disappearance of Jill Meagher took a crucial turn after police connected the CCTV footage of the man in the blue hoodie to a car caught on a highway camera near the time and location of Jill's last phone signal. The vehicle was registered to Adrian Ernest Bailey, a man with a long and violent criminal history. This discovery marked a pivotal moment in the case as Bailey became the prime suspect in Jill's abduction and murder. Adrian Bailey was no stranger to the law. His criminal record was both extensive and disturbing, dating back to his teenage years when he committed his first sexual assault at the age of 18. Over the years, Bailey had been involved in multiple violent crimes, many of them against women. In 2000, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison after being convicted of raping 5 sex workers over a 6-month period. Despite the gravity of his crimes, Bailey was released on parole in 2010, after serving just 8 years of his sentence. Bailey's history showed a consistent pattern of sexual violence, and shockingly, he was still on parole at the time of Jill Meagher's murder. Even more disturbing was the fact that, in the months leading up to Jill's death, Bailey had been involved in violent altercations and additional sexual assaults. but authorities had failed to revoke his parole, allowing him to remain free. Bailey was placed under surveillance by police after they traced his car to the same area as Jill's last phone signal. The urgency of the situation became clear, given his history of sexual violence. On September 27, 2012, just 5 days after Jill's disappearance, Adrian Bailey was arrested at his home in Coburg, a northern suburb of Melbourne. During his initial interrogation, Bailey attempted to deny any involvement in Jill's disappearance. He claimed he had spent the night looking for his girlfriend after an argument and insisted that he knew nothing about Jill or what had happened to her. However, police were already building a strong case against him, and during a search of his home, they uncovered a SIM card in his washing machine that belonged to Jill Meagher. Confronted with this evidence, Bailey's demeanor changed, and he finally confessed to raping and murdering Jill Meagher. He admitted to strangling her with his bare hands after she had rejected his sexual advances and threatened to call the police. His confession revealed the chilling details of how he had dragged her into a laneway off Hope Street, assaulted her, and then disposed of her body. Bailey's confession led police to Black Hill Road in Gisborne South, a remote area about 50 kilometers from Melbourne, where he had buried Jill's body in a shallow grave. On September 27, just hours after Bailey's arrest, police recovered Jill's remains. The discovery brought a tragic sense of closure to her family, friends, and the community who had been desperately hoping for her safe return. The revelation of Bailey's identity and the details of his past crimes ignited public outrage. Many questioned how someone with such a violent criminal history had been allowed to remain free and how the parole system had failed to protect Jill and other women from such a dangerous predator. As Bailey awaited trial, the full extent of his crimes would come to light, raising serious concerns about the flaws in the justice system that allowed him to be on the streets at the time of Jill Meagher's murder. The arrest of Adrian Bailey, following his chilling confession to the rape and murder of Jill Meagher, led to widespread media coverage and intense public interest in the judicial proceedings. Bailey was swiftly charged with rape and murder, and in June 2013, he appeared before the court to face justice. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Bailey initially attempted to plead not guilty to Jill's murder, a move that many saw as a cruel prolonging of the family's suffering. However, just days before the trial was due to begin, Bailey finally changed his plea to guilty. His admissions spared Jill's family the anguish of a lengthy and harrowing trial, but it did little to alleviate the deep sense of loss they felt. During the sentencing hearing, Justice Jeffrey Nettle described Bailey as a sexual predator, emphasizing the brutal and senseless nature of Jill's death. Justice Nettle remarked that Jill had been attacked and killed while innocently walking home, and highlighted how Bailey had used his physical strength to overpower her. He also made clear that Jill's murder was a result of either her threat to call the police after the sexual assault or, more disturbingly, because Bailey found the idea of taking her life sexually arousing. Bailey was sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 35 years, ensuring he would spend the bulk of his life behind bars. However, the sentencing did not stop there. As more of his victims came forward, Bailey was tried for several other rapes that had taken place prior to Jill's murder. These additional convictions, from separate trials, added further years to his sentence, ultimately extending his non-parole period to 43 years. Bailey, now convicted of crimes against 12 victims, would not be eligible for parole until he was in his 80s, though many hoped he would never be released. Bailey's heinous crime did not just raise questions about his actions, but it also exposed significant failures in the Victorian parole system. When Bailey raped and murdered Jill Meagher, he was already on parole for previous sexual offenses. His extensive criminal record, which included multiple rapes and violent assaults dating back to his teenage years, should have made him a high-risk offender. However, despite these clear warning signs, he was released on parole and allowed to roam free. The fact that Bailey was out on parole while committing such a horrific crime provoked outrage across Australia. The public, media, and even politicians called for immediate reforms to the parole system, demanding that dangerous criminals like Bailey be more closely monitored. Jill's death became a tragic symbol of the systemic failures that allowed violent offenders to slip through the cracks. In the months following the case, Victoria's parole laws underwent significant changes. Among the most critical reforms was the introduction of harsher restrictions on parole eligibility for violent offenders. Additionally, the monitoring of parolees was tightened, with offenders who breached parole conditions now facing stricter consequences. A key reform was the establishment of an electronic database to track parolees more efficiently, replacing the outdated paper system that had previously been in place. These changes, though vital, came too late for Jill Meagher and the many others affected by Bailey's violent rampage. Still, her case left a profound legacy, as it spurred much-needed reforms designed to prevent future tragedies and ensure that dangerous criminals like Bailey could no longer exploit weaknesses in the system to continue their reign of terror. In his final statement, Justice Nettle encapsulated the deep sense of public betrayal caused by the parole system's failure. He noted that had Bailey not been released, Jill Meagher would still be alive. The reforms that followed were a step toward ensuring that such failures would not be repeated and that justice would be better served for all victims of violent crime in the future. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. If you've made it to this point, drop a comment with the word "done," and we'll give you a personal shout-out to show our appreciation. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive in this murder and media frenzy. It was as fascinating for us to create as we hope it was for you to hear. If you found this episode thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, so you never miss an update. We also invite you to join our YouTube channel, where you can get early access to our content, have your questions answered directly, and enjoy exclusive members-only content. We'd love to know what you think about this case. Was justice truly served? Share your opinions in the comments below. We're always eager to hear your thoughts. For those wanting to explore more on true crime, we've included Amazon affiliate links to some of the books we referenced in our researches. Purchasing through the link won't cost you anything extra, but it will support the channel and help us continue bringing you more content. If you're craving even more, consider joining our Patreon community. As a member, you'll get access to the full script of this episode, exclusive book summaries, and even the complete set of images featured in this case, available for purchase in our Patreon store. This has been 22 Crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.